Hiss of cryoseals breaking, a soft, sultry alien voice. Steady, human, it's been 20 years since you last woke. Footsteps circle, a low hum of alien machinery. Your muscles need stimulation. And in my culture, we do it by hand. Human coughs nervously. Wait, both your hands? Alien chuckles, voice dripping with mischief. All four. A hiss of pressurized air. A deep, mechanical groan as the cryopod unlocked. Steady, human, the voice said, smooth and low, carrying a note of command beneath its softness. It's been 20 years since you last woke. His eyelids twitched against the sudden light, dry throat trying to form words that felt like gravel. 20 years? His voice was a cough wrapped in disbelief. Guess I missed a few birthdays. The pod lid swung up, releasing the dense chill that had soaked into his bones. Before he could stumble out, something caught him, warm, firm, oddly flexible. 4 appendages, at least 2 of which had no business being where they were. You are unstable, she said, matter of fact, as if cradling a barely conscious human was just part of her shift. I will support you until your circulatory integrity returns. He tried to push himself upright, but her grip shifted, drawing him closer against a smooth surface that felt more like living silk than skin. You're very hands-on. In my medical discipline, we call it manual stimulation, she replied, without a trace of irony. Machines lack the sensitivity required for delicate handling. Delicate handling, he repeated, half under his breath. And there's no machine alternative? She sounded almost offended. A device cannot read the precise tension of muscle fiber, cannot feel the subtle shiver of a nerve waking from dormancy. Only a living touch can coax proper function back into a long dormant body. He swallowed. You're saying this is therapy? Yes. Occupational therapy. The words rolled off her tongue as if they were something far more intimate. You will require at least 3 sessions before the end of this rotation. A faint tremor ran through his legs, and her arms, or whatever they were, tightened around him, pulling him closer until he could feel her warmth seeping through the thin recovery garment they'd dressed him in. She began kneading slow, deliberate circles along his shoulders, down his arms, applying just enough pressure to make his skin flush. He exhaled sharply. You do this for all your patients? Not all. Some recover without contact. You. She paused, fingertips brushing the inside of his wrist. Your circulation is stubborn. Your muscles are tight. You require full engagement. Her phrasing made him raise a brow. Full engagement? In my culture, she continued, we begin with the most vulnerable regions. It ensures the fastest restoration of blood flow. The corners of his mouth twitched despite the stiffness in his face. And which regions are those? She tilted her head, voice turning just a shade warmer. Where your heartbeat is loudest, your warmth most concentrated, and your reactions most noticeable. A low, steady thrum filled the small chamber as she worked her fingers down the sides of his torso, pressing into knots that had apparently been building for 2 decades. He tried to ignore the way her touch seemed to linger a moment too long in certain places, or the way her breath ghosted against his neck when she leaned close to check his pulse consistency. You're tense, she murmured. I wonder why, he muttered. You are not resisting, though. Not exactly. Her chuckle was soft but carried weight. Resistance would hinder recovery. You are a cooperative patient. I appreciate that. His knees buckled for a moment, and she caught him again, lifting with effortless strength. We will continue on the bench, she decided. Your stability is insufficient for standing work. Standing work? He said, half laughing. You make it sound like. I am making it sound like what it is, she interrupted, lowering him onto something padded. Long-term stasis atrophies not just muscles, but spirit. Both must be stimulated back to strength. He lay back, feeling the cushion mold to his shape while she adjusted her position. Her voice remained calm, professional on the surface, yet each word carried an undertone he couldn't quite place. Maybe it was her accent, maybe it was the way she paused slightly before certain terms, as if giving him time to imagine something entirely different. She began working his calves, thumbs pressing deep, dragging upward in slow, controlled strokes. "This will feel unusual at first," she said, "but you will learn to trust the sensation." "Oh, I'm learning," he said, his tone dry but edged with something else. She ignored him, or perhaps just pretended to, moving to his thighs with steady, purposeful pressure. "Blood flow restored here will quicken recovery elsewhere," she explained. "The process is holistic." He tried to focus on her words, not the heat building in his skin or the almost ceremonial rhythm of her movements. "And how long have you practiced this kind of therapy?" "A decade. And I studied under specialists known for their thoroughness." He made a small sound, half laugh, half sigh. "I bet you did." Her hands paused briefly, then resumed with even firmer pressure. "You are interpreting my words with different connotations. Maybe. Or maybe you're just saying them in a way that makes it impossible not to." She didn't answer, but her grip shifted again, lifting him slightly so her arms could slip beneath his back, fingers pressing along the line of his spine. The angle forced him closer, chest nearly against hers, her voice a low murmur by his ear. "Breathe deeply," she instructed. "Fill your lungs fully, then release. Again. Good. The more you breathe, the more your body will respond." Her scent, something faintly metallic and sweet, filled his head. He wondered if it was natural, or some kind of clinical vapor meant to relax him. If so, it was working. "Better," she whispered, as if speaking too loudly would undo the progress. "Already your pulse is stronger. Your temperature is rising. You are responding well to treatment." "Good to know I'm still responsive," he said without thinking. She chuckled again, the sound vibrating softly against him. "Oh, you are." For a long moment, there was only the rhythm of her hands, the hum of unseen machinery, and his own breathing growing slower, heavier. Then she withdrew just enough to speak clearly. "The first session will be prolonged," she told him. "You've been dormant for 20 years. We'll have to work you over thoroughly." He felt her hands slide back to his shoulders, thumbs pressing deep, circling once more before she let him recline fully against the bench. "Prolonged?" he repeated, his voice faintly amused. "Yes. Until I am satisfied your recovery is complete." He smiled faintly, eyes half-lidded. "Already looking forward to the next 20 years. Her breath was a whisper at his ear again. "Steady, human. By the end of this shift, you might not want to wait that long." The med bay carried a hum that felt alive, like the room itself was watching. He sat on the padded bench while the alien supervisor moved with unhurried precision, retrieving implements from a nearby console. Their shapes were alien, but their names, when she spoke them, sounded suspiciously suggestive. "This is a deep tissue prober," she said, lifting a slender rod with a flexible end. "Used to access areas too stubborn for manual manipulation." He arched a brow. "You practice saying that with a straight face?" She didn't blink. "It is important to be precise with my terminology. The prober has 3 modes: surface, intermediate, and full depth." She glanced at him with something just shy of a smile. "You will likely require the 3rd. Why am I not surprised?" he muttered. She placed the tool aside for the moment, moving closer. "Before I begin with instruments, I must evaluate your baseline flexibility." His eyes followed her as she circled him, each step deliberate, almost predatory. She stopped behind him, fingers sliding to his shoulders again, but this time with a firmer grip. "Lift your arms slowly, good. Now rotate at the torso. Limited range. We'll fix that. You make it sound like a challenge. It is. And I never leave a challenge unresolved." Her hands moved lower, spanning his ribcage, pressing in gently. "Your breathing is shallow. We'll deepen it." He swallowed, keeping his tone dry. "I thought we were working on my muscles. In my species, breath is the rhythm of the body. If it's irregular, everything else suffers. Breathe for me." He complied, more out of curiosity than obedience. Her hands followed the motion, tracking each inhale and exhale, fingers brushing in ways that felt almost intentional. Better, she murmured. But still, room for improvement. Story of my life. She moved around to face him, close enough that he could see the faint shimmer along her skin, like a sheen of liquid metal catching the light. We'll address your lower body next. Stand? He did, feeling the stiffness in his legs. She crouched slightly, her hands finding the backs of his knees, then gliding upward in slow, deliberate strokes until they rested on his hips. Your support structure is solid, she observed. But your stability is questionable. That's one way to put it. I will improve it. Spread your stance slightly. Yes. Now resist as I apply pressure. Her palms pushed inward against his thighs, and he instinctively pushed back, the motion subtle but enough to make his balance shift. She adjusted her grip, tightening just enough to hold him steady. You resist well, she said, her tone almost approving. This bodes well for recovery. Glad to hear it. Now we test endurance. Without warning, she hooked one of her appendages, something smooth and firm, around his ankle and tugged, forcing him to catch himself. She didn't release. Maintain posture. This is unconventional. My patients rarely complain, she replied, tightening the pull until his muscles trembled. You are holding, good. Now relax. The release left him unsteady, but she caught him before he could stumble. You overcompensate when fatigued. We'll correct that. Do I want to know how? Her lips curved faintly. Full body immersion therapy. He blinked. That sounds like something they sell at a spa. In my culture, it's a clinical necessity for post-stasis subjects. We submerge together in a conductive medium. Skin-to-skin contact enhances transmission of bioelectric signals. Wait, together? She tilted her head as if the question puzzled her. Of course. Conductivity is reduced if we wear barriers. You require efficiency, do you not? He hesitated, then sighed. You know, you have a way of making medical terms sound like invitations. Her eyes, if they were eyes, narrowed slightly, though amusement colored her tone. If you wish to interpret them so, I will not stop you. Now remove the upper garment. He hesitated just long enough for her to step forward and assist without asking. The thin recovery fabric slipped away, leaving the air cool against his skin. She studied him with a frankness that was both clinical and not. Your pectoral structure is impressive for a dormant specimen, she noted, fingers brushing over his chest as though mapping it. We will stimulate these fibers directly to restore strength. He gave a crooked smile. Go ahead, Doc. I'm all yours. Her fingers moved in slow, purposeful motions, pressing, kneading, then pausing to test resistance. You're responsive already, she observed. I told you I'm a fast learner. She didn't comment, but her hands slid lower, along his abdomen, testing the tension there. Core stability is key. Without it, you will falter in other functions. Other functions? Her gaze flicked up briefly, a glint in her expression. Locomotion. Balance. Endurance. He smirked. Sure. Let's call it that. She stepped back, gesturing toward the bench. Sit. I will complete this stage with manual manipulation of the lower limbs. He obeyed, though his eyes never left hers. She knelt before him, taking one calf in her hands, pressing her thumbs into the muscle with slow, rolling force. You hold more tension here than expected. Maybe I'm just naturally tense. Perhaps. Or perhaps you anticipate more than you admit. Guilty, he said with a shrug. She didn't smile, but her tone softened. Anticipation is useful. It keeps you engaged. But too much, and it fatigues you before the work is done. The steady rhythm of her hands worked upward, pausing at the back of his knee before continuing. This is critical, she said, pressing a point that made him jolt. Nerve junction. Stimulation here accelerates recovery. Pretty sure you just hit the jump button. Exactly. Her hands slid higher, stopping just short of the hip. We'll stop here for now. He leaned back slightly, exhaling. For now? Yes. Tomorrow, we begin the full immersion. That will complete phase 1 of your rehabilitation. And then? She straightened, stepping close enough for him to feel the heat radiating from her. Then, we see how much you've learned to handle. He met her gaze without flinching. Careful. I might surprise you. Her voice was a low hum. I expect you to. The immersion tank shimmered like molten glass, surface rippling with faint pulses of light. He stood at the edge, stripped to the minimal recovery wrap, while she adjusted controls on a panel that hummed in anticipation. Step in slowly, she instructed. Your body must acclimate to the conductive medium. He dipped a foot, flinching as warmth lapped at his skin. Feels like a hot tub. Her voice was even. This is no leisure device. The fluid contains bioactive compounds that stimulate every surface it touches. That's oddly specific. It must be. You've been inert for 2 decades. Your nerves need a reminder of what they're for. Pretty sure they remember, he said as the warmth climbed past his calves. She keyed a sequence, and the tank emitted a low thrumming note. Submerged to the shoulders. Full contact is required. He stepped deeper until the liquid hugged him completely. It clung, thicker than water, yet moved against him with its own slow current. It's like it's alive. It is. Microorganisms within the medium interface with your epidermis, transmitting impulses that mimic neural activity. That's one way to describe tingling everywhere. She stepped in after him without hesitation, her forelimbs slicing through the fluid with grace. It beaded against her skin like drops of mercury, yet slid away without leaving residue. She positioned herself close, hands finding his forearms beneath the surface. We must synchronize our rhythms. Follow my breathing. He tried, but the sensation of her hands gliding over his submerged arms was distracting in ways he suspected weren't strictly medical. This is harder than it sounds. Her gaze locked on his. Distraction is part of the therapy. It forces you to maintain focus under stimulation. Define stimulation. She tilted her head. You already feel it. The current shifted, guided by her subtle movements, wrapping them both in a spiral of heat. Her hands moved to his shoulders, kneading slowly as the medium's pulses synchronized with her touch. This is effective, he admitted. I told you. Conductivity increases when our bodies remain in contact. Yeah, I'm starting to see how that works. She adjusted her grip, one hand sliding down his spine in a deliberate, unbroken line. Posture correction. Hold your core steady. I'm holding a lot of things steady right now. Her tone was unbothered. Good. Endurance training is part of this phase. They moved in slow rotations, the liquid gliding over them in rhythmic waves. Every shift in position seemed calculated to draw his attention to some new point of contact. She spoke occasionally, guiding him through breathing patterns, but her hands never stopped their exploratory path along his body. Your circulatory response is strong, she noted. Better than most subjects at this stage. Guess I'm an overachiever. You will need that drive. The next stage involves dynamic resistance. That sounds vigorous. It is. She positioned herself behind him, her arms wrapping lightly around his torso. The medium thickened somehow, pulling against their movements. Now move with me. Slowly at first. They began a synchronized motion, pressing against the resistance, each step deliberate. The fluid's current pushed back, demanding effort to complete even the simplest movements. Her voice was close to his ear. Do not fight the medium directly. Redirect its force. I'll try, but it's pushing pretty hard. That is the point. Adaptation under pressure. Her limbs shifted, altering the flow so it slid between them in ways that made his breath hitch. She didn't comment, but her hold on him tightened fractionally. Good. You adjust quickly. I'm motivated. The current intensified, a steady pulse now accompanying its pressure. It was impossible to tell where her touch ended and the medium's influence began. His muscles burned, but the warmth made it almost pleasant. She released him abruptly, circling until they faced each other again. Phase 3, Targeted Impulse Delivery. Sounds like a fancy way to say you're going to shock me. Inaccurate. The impulses are more persuasive than forceful. She produced a small, disc-like device from a submerged belt pouch. Place this over your sternum. It will amplify my signals through your nervous system. He took it, pressing it against his chest. A soft hum spread through him instantly, accompanied by a faint vibration. Oh, okay, that's noticeable. Her hands found his sides, fingers pressing into muscles that tightened reflexively. Breathe through it. Let the signal travel. He exhaled, and the sensation seemed to intensify, spiraling outward in waves. She followed its path with her hands, tracing along his ribs, down his flanks, across his lower back. Your system is highly receptive, she murmured. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. But receptivity without control is wasted. You must channel it. And how exactly do I do that? She stepped closer until they were almost chest to chest, her upper limbs maintaining contact while the lower pair manipulated the water's current around his hips and legs. By allowing it to build, and then release on command. That sounds suspiciously like you're talking about something else. Her eyes narrowed faintly, though the corners of her mouth curved. Interpretations vary. Focus. They work through a series of controlled motions, each one sending new ripples of sensation through him. The combination of the medium's pulse, her touch, and the amplification device left him lightheaded but oddly energized. Finally, she reached up, removing the device from his chest. The hum faded, leaving behind only the residual warmth. Phase complete. You performed adequately. Adequately? After all that, I was hoping for a gold star. She stepped back toward the tank's edge, droplets sliding down her in slow rivulets. You will earn recognition when you master retention and release without assistance. He raised a brow. And I suppose you'll be the judge of that? Of course. I am your supervisor. Lucky me. She tilted her head toward the exit. Dry yourself and rest. Tomorrow we begin kinetic coupling drills. That sounds suspiciously promising. Her voice was almost a purr. It is. But you will find them demanding. He grinned. Good. I'm ready for a challenge. She paused at the doorway, glancing back over her shoulder. We'll see if you still say that after I test your limits. He was barely through his morning nutrient pack when she entered, carrying a long, flexible rod with a smooth metallic sheen. Stan, she ordered without preamble. Today is kinetic coupling. He eyed the rod. That looks less like therapy and more like something you'd use to discipline a wayward crew member. Her expression didn't shift. Both interpretations are accurate. This tool is an extension of my own movement. You will match it, no matter the pace or angle. Sounds like a dance. It is nothing so frivolous. This is coordination under variable stimulus. He set his pack down. All right. Show me. She took position, the rod balanced across two hands. With a flick, it whirled in a blur, then stilled against his shoulder, firm but not painful. React. Redirect its momentum. He grasped the rod, but she twisted it with a sudden shift, forcing him to pivot to avoid losing balance. Better, she murmured, but you hesitated. You didn't exactly give me a countdown. In the field, no one warns you. She pressed forward, each motion faster than the last, the rod striking, sweeping, nudging him into new positions. Every time he thought he had the rhythm, she changed it. This is more intense than yesterday's pull exercise. Intensity produces adaptation. You are already sweating. That's because you're trying to knock me over. Her gaze locked on his. Then plant yourself. Root. Absorb force. Return it. He braced, catching the rod mid-swing. She responded by stepping in, twisting so her body aligned with his. The sudden proximity threw off his focus more than the strike itself. Your attention wavers, she said softly. You're kind of hard to ignore. Her mouth quirked. Distraction is a weapon. You must learn to fight despite it. The next sequence blurred, rod strikes alternating with her lower limbs sweeping toward his legs. He blocked one, dodged another, then found himself guided backward until the wall met his shoulders. Nowhere to go, he said. She leaned in slightly, the rod pinning lightly against his chest. Exactly. Now escape. He shifted weight, sliding along the wall until he slipped free. She allowed it, but only barely. Acceptable, she said, stepping back. Again. They repeated the drill, each exchange quicker, sharper. He began anticipating her shifts, using the rod's momentum to spin her instead of himself. Once, he caught her off guard, reversing their positions so she stood against the wall. That was deliberate, she said. Yeah. I'm adaptable, remember? Her eyes glinted. Do not become overconfident. Overconfidence breaks more than bones. Noted. The pace increased again. This time, when she closed distance, he didn't yield. Their grips on the rod locked, bodies close enough that heat passed between them even without contact. You resist well, she said quietly. Some things are worth resisting, he replied. She tilted her head. And some are meant to be redirected. Her shift was sudden, a twist of the rod, a pivot of her hips, and he was moving with her, not against her, the two of them spinning into open space. The rod became less a weapon and more a shared anchor, their motions fluid despite the speed. You are learning coupling, she said. I'm learning you're very good at making people do what you want. Observation is progress. They moved until his muscles burned and his breathing came ragged. She finally slowed, bringing the rod down in a single smooth arc until it rested across both their shoulders. Phase complete, she declared. Already? I was just starting to keep up. You were starting to survive. Mastery will require repetition. I'm fine with that. She set the rod aside and produced a small container from her belt. Recovery compound. Apply it to affected muscles. He reached for it, but she held it back. Assistance increases effectiveness. He raised a brow. Assistance or supervision? Her mouth curved faintly. Both. She opened the container, dipping her fingers into a pale, shimmering gel. The scent was sharp, almost citrus, with an undertone of heat. This will penetrate deep tissue, she explained, pressing her hands against his shoulders. The gel warmed instantly, sinking into the ache in his muscles. That's nice, he admitted. Do not relax completely. The compound works best under mild tension. She moved with methodical precision, tracing the gel over every muscle group they'd engaged. Each pass was professional in technique yet impossible to separate from the awareness of her touch. You're very thorough, he said. I have standards. If a patient leaves with unresolved tension, the session is incomplete. I'd say you're meeting your quota. Her gaze flicked to his. Quotas are for the unmotivated. I pursue optimal results. By the time she finished, the heat from the gel had merged with his own, leaving him loose yet alert. She wiped her hands on a cloth, stepping back. Your progress is satisfactory. Only satisfactory? For now. Tomorrow will determine if you retain today's gains. And if I do, then we advance to paired endurance trials. That sounds challenging. Her tone was calm, but the edges of her words curled with promise. It will be. And you will meet it, or you will break. Either outcome will be instructive. He met her gaze without looking away. Guess we'll find out how durable humans really are. Her answer was a slow, knowing smile before she turned and left, leaving the faint scent of the recovery compound in the air, and the certainty that tomorrow would not be easier.